So today we're talking about the path of service. This is called karma yoga in the yogic tradition. And so far we talked about the path of wisdom, jnana yoga, which is for people who are more analytical and tend to, discern this is the way, this is not the way, this is truth, this is not the truth. How many of you can recognize yourself in being analytical and intellectual, tendency to like to read and to think and that kind of thing. And then we talked about the path of devotion, which is for people who tend to be more emotional. And devotion is where, you could express your love for God through singing, through dancing, through worshiping God through a form. And, we all need devotion to some degree. If you're just analytical and you don't have feeling, you're not going to do much. You're just going to get lost in your thought process, right? And if you're all about emotion, but you're not using good judgment, then you're going to do some stuff that's not great for you. And with the path of service, karma yoga, karma means action. So it's action, and it's a certain attitude about your action. It's action without attachment to the fruits of your actions. Attachment without attachment to the fruits. In other words, you're doing the work because it's yours to do. You're doing the work because you're guided to do it. The universe has given it to you to do. You heard the word dharma. It's yours to do. And that applies to path of wisdom. It applies to devotion. When you meditate, you want to meditate without attachment to the fruits, meditate, that wasn't much. Well, you know what? You just have to be dedicated. You just have to be committed. You just have to keep doing it. And then you find over time, it goes deeper and more fulfilling over time. You don't just constantly look at, what are the fruits? See, the path of service is doing work without attachment to the fruits. The Bhagavad Gita, which is the Hindu Bible, which is part of a much bigger source of ancient wisdom, could be summed up as karma yoga. Doing without attachment to the fruits. And essentially, it's the story of Arjuna, who was a great warrior, and his charioteer, who was Krishna, or God, kind of like Jesus or Moses. God. And the charioteer is teaching Arjuna. And one of the things he says to Arjuna is about service. He says, "You are Arjuna, ask not, want not. Do not as those who follow virtue for its gifts. You do right for the sake of doing right, not for what comes back. Renounce the fruits of your action." Now that's a very different way of thinking for most people, right? Most people are thinking about what's in it for me. What am I going to get out of it? They're working for money, they're working for rewards, they're working for trophies, they're working for status, they're working for approval. They're doing stuff because of what they're going to get out of it, right? Now that's not wrong. I'm not saying there's anything wrong about it. It just has its vulnerabilities. And why is karma yoga important? Doing for the sake of doing without attachment to the fruits. Well, in psychology, if you study motivation, some of you know I'm an expert in psychology applied to golf in particularly. And I've actually taught hundreds, if not thousands, of golfers sports psychology applied to their golf game. And when you look at motivation, there's something called extrinsic motivation and intrinsic motivation. You've heard of it? Extrinsic motivation is where you're doing it for the rewards. You're doing it for the trophy. You're doing it for the money. You're doing it because other people expect you to do it. You're doing it because you've taken on the values and expectations of what other people want you to do. You're motivated by the extrinsic, the outer, right? There's nothing wrong with that, except that it won't be deeply satisfying, and it can cause a great deal of stress, disappointment, and frustration. Because one, you may not win the award. Two, you may not be doing what's deeply fulfilling for you. You're doing what other people want you to do. And, you know, it creates pressure. We put pressure on ourselves. And there's nothing, it can motivate a person to work hard and to do things, but ultimately it has its drawbacks. So that's extrinsic motivation. Then there's intrinsic motivation, which is doing it for the joy of doing it. Doing the action for the joy of it. Extrinsic is not doing it for the joy of it, it's doing it because you want to get something from it. Right? Intrinsic, you're doing it for the joy of it. Essentially, that's what karma yoga is. It's doing the action because it's the right thing for you to do and doing it for the joy of doing it. And usually that has to do with certain psychological factors like autonomy. You're doing it because you choose to do it. You're doing it because you want to do it. You're not doing it because somebody else expects you to do it. And then there's the idea of getting good at something. The challenge of doing it well because it's satisfying to do it well. You want to succeed at it. You know, why do people run triathlon? Why do people do triathlons? Why do people do different stuff that they do? Well, the best, oftentimes, they find it inwardly fulfilling and satisfying because of the challenge. It's one of the reasons I love to play golf in tournaments. It's not, I've won enough tournaments where I don't care about the trophy. I just care about getting better. And it's a great test for my attitude and so on to play in a tournament. That's all. It's a test. And so it's satisfying and motivating. See, one of the problems with extrinsic is if there is no trophy or there is no approval, you're not motivated. But when it's intrinsic, you're motivated by your internal self. You get satisfaction from doing it. That's the psychological. Okay, we can relate to that, right? You can apply it to sports. You can apply it to different things. And, you know, as one psychologist points out, it's okay to have extrinsic motivations, but don't make it your main motivation. I like that, right? It's okay to have those, but don't make it your main motivation. There are books written on just that whole thing, right? So let's go a little more esoteric for karma yoga, which is karma's action. And according to the yogi sages, we've been sowing stuff for lifetimes. We've been doing stuff and trying to get satisfaction through the outer world. And as the song goes, I can't get no satisfaction. It ain't happening. You know, people just say I'm going to behave the way I need them to behave, so I'll be happy. The world's not going to be the way I want it to be. The world's going to be the way it is. Right? Anybody notice that yet? Anybody notice you can't change another person? Yeah. Yeah, we notice. You can't. And so we've spent lifetimes trying to change the world, trying to get satisfaction in the world, and we've had these desires for stuff and things and situations. And that's called karma. You've sown the stuff, and according to that teaching, you keep coming back until you fulfill all those desires. But eventually, you wake up and you go, okay, I'm going to quit looking for love in all the wrong places. I'm going to quit looking for satisfaction outside of myself. I'm going to start finding it inside myself. Because I want to walk around in happiness. I want to walk around in joy. I want to walk around in fulfillment. I want to live my life from a place of wholeness. I don't want to be an empty shell looking around trying to get everything to fulfill me. I want to be whole inside. How many of you want to be whole inside? And walk around. That's what the kingdom of God is about, right? That's a good goal, isn't it? It's a good aspiration. A good journey to go on. That's what Jesus meant. He said, I've come that my joy might be in you and your joy might be full. He didn't mean go around being crazy for one lifetime and if you believe in Jesus then you're going to go to heaven and everything's going to be great. No, it's an inner journey of awakening to the truth of our own wholeness. So karma yoga is stop doing stuff to try to get something. Stop sowing that karma and start finding the fulfillment inside and start doing stuff because it's yours to do. Start doing stuff because you're guided to do it. That's a whole different place, isn't it? So that's a more esoteric reason for karma yoga. You know, you just trust that as you do what's yours to do, good stuff's going to unfold in your life. I want to share a radical example of that. A Taiwanese artist named Wen Kuei Shang was known in Taiwan for building these 100-foot Buddhas. And the Chinese sent a representative to him and asked him if he would build a Buddha for one of their famous mountains. I have to look that up. M.A. or M.I. mountain. And a holy mountain. And they wanted him to build this 150-foot Buddha. And of course, being a Buddhist, he was honored to do that. He spent a year designing it. A year. He designed a 10-faced Buddha. 150 foot tall. He gave the plans to the Chinese representative. They went away and said, give us a couple months, we'll get back to you soon. Months went by, never heard anything. Finally, they came back to him and said, you know what? We took your plans, we tried to build it with our own people. And they couldn't do it with the same detail that you can do it in finesse and artistry. Would you do it for us still? Only there's one problem. We spent our whole budget trying to build it ourselves. Would you do it for free? He said yes. He raised the money and went to China every month to supervise the building of this Buddha that he spent a year designing. And when it was all done, they had a big celebration. He was invited, of course. He was supervising the whole thing. He was invited, he came, and to his shock, on the Buddha were the names of the Chinese artists who had tried to build it and failed, and his name was not on it. A friend said, this is insane. You designed it, they stole your design, they tried to build it, they asked you to do it for free, you spent all this money, time, and travel, and then they didn't even give you credit for it. Aren't you furious? Listen to what he said. Not really. The moments I spent creating a statue of Buddha satisfied me completely. My reward can only be in the process of creation, never in monetary payment. Whether I got paid or credit is immaterial to me. For me, being able to make a contribution to humanity through art is all that matters. Everything else is immaterial. Can I hear somebody go, wow, wow, wow. What a mindset, right? What a mindset. Now here's the rest of the story. Other nations learned who the real artist of that statue was. And so they invited him to start building statues for them in their country. And he built, in India, he built a walking Buddha. And, so he put the energy out there and was unattached to it, and good came back to him. Wow. He was spared the fury and all that, went with being attached to the outcome, and found satisfaction in the doing of the thing itself. How many of you are excited about enjoying more of your work that you're doing, no matter what it is, right? And that, part of it is distinguishing work from service. Work from service. The yogi sage Paramahansa Yogananda, one of his students, disciples, whatever you want to call her, she was a hard worker. And Yogananda said to her, "You must not work so hard." She said, "Okay, all right." And he gave her work to do, more work to do. So she went away, okay, and she, so she added that to all the work she was doing. She was working. He saw her a few days later. You really shouldn't work so much. She said, "Okay, yeah, all right." And he gave her more work to do. So she went away and she prayed about it. She thought, now I know there's got to be a reason why he's telling me this. What is it? And she thought, all of a sudden it occurred to her, I get it. Next time she saw him, she said, "Sir, maybe instead of calling it work, I'd call it service." And Yogananda laughed. He said, yes, you've been working so hard. Work, work, work. You've done enough work in this lifetime for several lifetimes. You must not work. You must think of it in terms of service. Serving God, doing it for God, and seeing God as the doer through you doing it. And when you do that, you have energy, you have, it has a whole different meaning and feeling to it. For you, when you do something out of service, do you feel a difference between service and work? Yes. What difference do you feel when you're doing something out of service versus work? Online, please put it in the chat, or those of you in the space. What difference do you feel when you're doing something with an attitude of service? Did I see a hand? Less tiring. You have more energy. More energy. Yeah, because I guess if you're doing it at work, you're like, okay, well, got to do it. Versus, I want to do this. Any other? Yeah.
Inner creativity comes forth.
More creativity flows forth. Yes, yes. You're not in your way, right? The ego's not in the way. It's just, you're a flow. You're open. Any other differences? Those are good. Yes, in the back.
Work is pressure.
Pressure. You feel more pressure in work versus service. Service, there's no attachment, right? I'm doing it out of service. And you know what? That can apply in every area of our life, right? If we're serving God, and we're being a vehicle through which God does it through us, then we trust that, well, God is the source of everything. So if I'm doing it for God and God is doing it through me, I'm going to be all right. There's the old saying, do your best and leave the rest. Right? Jesus said, I work and the Father works. We do our best and we leave the rest. And so we can decide, why are we doing this? Of course you need to pay the bills. Of course you got expenses. Of course the rent needs to be paid. Of course, of course. But the work begins to be seen as service. I'm serving God, and then guess what? God is the source through the employer, through wherever the channels are, and the bills get paid, the things get done, because you are giving, right? We're giving. As you give, so do you receive. Work becomes an avenue through which we can give, And in our giving, we are opening up to the flow of abundance. The late Eric Butterworth had a great illustration about lightning. It's coming to my mind right now. I hadn't planned to share it with you, but it seems like it would be a good one. And, you know, when lightning strikes the earth, it looks like it's blowing up the tree or whatever. But apparently what's happening, like it's coming from the sky into the earth. But what's happening is it sends a leader bolt to the object, and then from the earth, the power goes up the leader bolt. That's what explodes the thing. It's coming, the leader bolt is like a contact point through which the mass from the earth flows and creates the explosion. Our work is a contact point through which we release the kingdom of God into our life. The thing that we are serving in becomes an opportunity to release a greater flow of abundance into our life, you see. So service has a different feeling, doesn't it? You're doing this for God. Doesn't matter what you're doing. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. said, if you're sweeping the street, be the best sweeper there is. Right? Do it with all your heart. Throw your heart into it. Do it with all your might. Having an attitude of service. So, detachment from the fruits, looking at as service, and then seeing God as the doer. That's the deeper aspect of karma yoga. It's recognizing that actually I'm not doing anything. This is tricky, by the way. This is a tricky one. The great sages tell us you're not doing anything. God is really the doer. Be an instrument. Let God do it through you. Recognize that God is doing it through you. Now that idea, I say it's tricky because I've wondered about that. I'm like, well, if God is doing it, what about when I make a mistake? You know? How do I get better if God is the one doing it? Well, I've worked that out in my own mind. You just do the best you can. You learn from the results. You make corrections, but you recognize that God is really doing it through you. You know, use your intelligence. You do the best you can, but you couldn't do anything without God's power. You wouldn't have intelligence without God's intelligence. So being an instrument has helped me as a minister over the years, because when you recognize, I'm not doing it, God is doing it. I'm just showing up. You got to show up. You see, when you know that God is the doer, you can show up. You go, well, God, I'm not really sure exactly what I'm going to be doing, what has to happen. I'm a little insecure about it, but you're the doer. I'm going to show up. How many of you can show up? And that's a big part of it, is showing up. You might feel insecure about it, you might be uncertain about it, but you know what? I'm just an instrument, I'm a vehicle. I'm going to show up and let God do it through me. And then you learn and you grow. You learn and you grow. Emmett Fox, the late metaphysician, said, affirm divine intelligence is working through me now. Divine intelligence is working through me now. He said, affirm that and you will do whatever you got to do, much greater level of proficiency. Divine intelligence is working through me now. You want to say that with me? Divine intelligence is working through me now. Again, divine intelligence is working through me now. Before you got to make a difficult phone call, before you take on a project, before you start writing, you can affirm that. And I'm going to tell you, eventually, when you do that enough, you don't have to do it anymore. You just trust. You got to remind yourself, the ego's still there, unfortunately, until we're fully free. Your ego's always going to be in there somewhere, and you got to remind yourself. But seeing God as the doer, that's a part of karma yoga, the pathway of service. There are opportunities for service everywhere, aren't there? Yes. Everywhere. They can be little things, like I have a friend, he bought a printer, and he was walking out to his car, and he was trying to hold the printer and open the car door at the same time. I don't know why he didn't just put it on the ground, but he was trying to open the car door, and someone saw him and walked over and opened the car door for him, and he put it in an act of service. He said, "Thank you very much." How are you? We can always be open to little acts of service that might be presenting themselves in our immediate situation. How are you when people want to be of service to you? As long as their motives are good, right? I mean, hey, I'll do this for you if you do something for me. No, all right, that's different. But, sometimes you see somebody needs a little help, and you extend it. How are you when someone doesn't want your help? Just walk away. That's good. You don't let it bother you, right? Well, okay, fine. You don't want my help? That's fine. Jesus said you knock on people's door. In his day, his disciples were sent out there to preach the gospel. And he said, if somebody doesn't want you in their household, dust off your feet and just keep on going. Right? I was in the gym. A year ago, I joined a new gym. And I was in the gym, and I started working with the barbell, doing squats and deadlifts and this kind of stuff. And it's kind of challenging putting these big 45-pound weights on the barbell and you go to the other side, you put it on, all that. So I was in there one day. A year later, I know now it's pretty easy once you get the hang of it. But then I thought that's kind of challenging. And I saw a lady. She was going to do, stuff, and she was putting the weights on the bar. And I walked over to help put the weights on. She was like, "No, I don't need to help." I'm like, "Okay, no problem." She could probably whoop my butt anyway, so I'm not going to argue with you. And, so I walked away. Fine. I was taken aback a little bit. And there's two lessons there. One is, how are we when someone doesn't want our help? If we're attached to it, if we're doing it because we want something, attached to the fruits of your action, well, why isn't that person grateful for my help? Why don't they want my help? Why isn't there an expression of appreciation for my help? You see, that's an attachment to the fruits. As opposed to, no, I'm offering it out of love. I'm offering it out of service. If they don't want it, fine. I'm not attached to it. I'm here if you want my help. If you don't want my help, that's fine. And then what if someone wants to help you? Offer you to hold the door for you. Help you put the weight on the barbell or whatever. How are you with accepting help? I don't know what was going on in her mind. It doesn't matter. It's fine. I saw her a couple weeks ago. I barely even looked at her a couple weeks ago. I'm like, it's all right, no problem. You get your corner, I'm over here. But, so these are all parts. Service opportunities to serve are everywhere around us if we're open to it and if we're guided to do something. One of my definitions of a do-gooder, you hear that term about a do-gooder? I don't know what it means to other people, but to me it means trying to do something for somebody else that they don't need your help. They don't need your help. They don't want your help. Know any parents who do that? Grandparents? Brothers and sisters? They want to do, sometimes they want to help and they don't want the help because they want the satisfaction of doing it themselves. They're like, I'm a grown-up. Mom, Dad, I can handle this. If I want your help, I'll ask you. And then a mom or dad and grandparent, whoever, brother, sister, if they're unattached because they really want to be of service, and they really do love unconditionally, it's not about them, it's about, well, I'm here, honey. If you need my help, I'm here. That's a very different energy, isn't it? That kind of energy is appreciated. Don't you appreciate people who are like, they're willing to support you and help you, but it's not for them. It's for you. If you want it, it's there. If not, they're not going to impose themselves on you. Can be very annoying to have a parent or grandparent, brother, sister imposing themselves on you because they need to feel useful. It's for them. You know what I mean? That's said too simply, probably. But anyway, serving because you're guided to serve and because it's yours to do. I'm going to end with this last, what I think is a pretty deep idea. And it's one made by Michael Singer, the author of The Untethered Soul. And it's that when you're doing the work that's yours to do, that's been given to you, the work that God has given you, the work that the universe has given you, the healing work can take place inside of you while you're doing your work. This is a very important point. That when you're focused on a project or work, the universe, God, Spirit, whatever you call it, is always trying to heal you and me. It's always trying to purify you. It's always going to bring up stuff inside of you that needs to be healed and released. You know that? Your mind, our minds, our hearts are cluttered with junk. We got a lot of stuff we've repressed and suppressed over the years. And so the Spirit is always trying to purify us and bring it up. And the problem is, we can't handle if we're just focused on that, we can't handle it. But when you have a project or work to do, now that stuff can come up, but you're occupied in doing your work and that healing can take place while you're busy doing what's yours to do. Anybody hear me say that? You get that one? Imagine a person who has gone through a big breakup in a relationship. Which person would you rather be? They went through a big breakup in a relationship, and one of them is a kind of a career person. She's got to be at work at 8 a.m. She's working there till, 6 p.m. She's busy. She's got projects to do. She's got to show up to work. She's got stuff to do. She don't have time to sit around thinking about, why did he break up with me? I wonder what he's doing right now. I know we at this time, this is what we would have been doing. And, oh, it's so terrible. I'm never going to meet anybody, blah, blah, blah. No, it's 6 o'clock. She's got to get to work. She doesn't have time to do all that. Maybe a little bit of it. And you got to go to work, got to do your job, got to focus at work. No time to be getting all up in that stuff. Or would you rather be the other person who's got all the time in the world? They don't have anything to do. I don't feel like getting out of bed this morning. I think I'll just feel sorry for myself. I think I'll just roll around on a couch and watch all these romantic comedies and just cry. Anybody ever done that? Yeah, every night. No. I had a friend like that. For years, she talked about, I want to meet somebody. She never did anything to go out and meet anybody. She just watched romantic comedies till 1 a.m. in the morning. Anyway, God bless her. I loved her. But, so work, when we have things to focus on, work of like meditation. Meditation's type of work. If you got a meditation time, you show up to it. Right? You just do it. And Singer says that's more important than the meditation itself. Because you wake up and you're like, I don't feel like meditating. Well, that's your ego. That's the ego. I don't feel like meditating today. I meditated 4 days. I'm not going to meditate today. No one will miss it. God's not going to miss me. Now you're giving in to your ego. Now it's about you. Now it's about, I don't feel like getting up. Press the snooze button again. I don't have to get up. When you got work to do, you got a reason to get out of bed, right? If you show up at meditation, no matter whether you feel like meditating, whether you're indifferent about meditating, whether you're excited about meditating, you just show up and you do it. What is that doing? That's exercising the fact that you're independent of how I'm feeling today, what my ego wants to do today. You see, you're showing up and doing something. And that's your stability. Because the healing work, the purifying, the cleansing activity is happening inside of us all the time. It's spirit trying to heal you. And that instability is going to always be there. But if you got the stability of stuff to do, projects to do, well, I've got to meditate. I've got to go to the gym. I've got this project to work on. I've got to be at work. I've got to go visit my grandkids. I've got to go to this volunteer opportunity. I've got to do my yoga. I've got to da-da-da. I'm learning how to play racquetball. But when you got stuff to do, now you're occupying your mind while this healing work can be taking place inside of you. Because when it gets hot inside and all this stuff is going on, you don't want to be sitting around going, oh my God, I don't know what to do with my life. You know, you're busy. You're doing your work. The work that God has given you to do. The work that is there for you to do. Well, I don't know what I should do. Well, let the universe show you what to do. What is there that needs to be done? What are you passionate about? What do you have skills to do? What needs to be done? Get busy doing it. Because if we're sitting around just, well, I don't, you know, they've done studies of watching television. You know, everybody wore a beeper back in the days of beeper, and they would beep you and go, how are you feeling right now? Well, I'm feeling sad. Well, how are you feeling right now? You know, they just beep random people around the world. And what they found is people watching television tend to feel mildly depressed. Do you know that? Passive activity, mildly depressed. So having work and doing it with our focus is a great way of allowing the healing process to take place and learning to find joy in everything. That's what I'm talking about. How many of you like that? Finding joy in everything. Everything. Yeah. Here's a great quote from the Bhagavad Gita again. By the performance of his simple tasks, let a man rise to the highest state. Doesn't matter what you do. It's not the work that matters. It's the focus. Doesn't matter what you do. Like, back to King. Be the best street sweeper you can be. Doesn't matter what you're doing. Washing dishes. Doesn't matter what you're doing. There was a great monk who wanted to work in the chapel in the monastery. He wanted to be like a priest type of person. He wanted to pray all the time. What did they do? Brother Lawrence. They put him in the kitchen. He said, I hate to cook. I don't want to work in the kitchen. Well, he accepted it. He said, okay, I'm not leading the prayers. I'm not doing that stuff. I'm in the kitchen. So what did he do? He approached it with a prayerful attitude. He approached it with mindfulness. He said he reached a point where he could lift a leaf off the ground and feel the whole love of God within him. His cooking became his altar. His washing dishes became his altar. Everything became infused with the awareness of the presence of God. His work became his service. His work became his worship. And that's what we're talking about. The path of service for people who are very action-oriented, people who are very doing-oriented. And your work can be an avenue through which you grow spiritually. Your work can be an avenue that will help take you to great heights of spiritual realization when done with those attitudes that we're talking about. Seeing it as service, seeing yourself as a vehicle and instrument, doing the work for God, being detached from the fruits. Don't let those be your main motivation. Let your inner guidance. This is what God has given me to do. This is what I'm here to do. This is how I make a difference in my own little way. And you know what? It's the energy that you put into what you're doing that makes the biggest difference. Mother Teresa said there are no great acts. There are only small acts done with great love. I don't care what it is. You take out the trash with love. That vibration, that energy helps the world, helps consciousness. I don't care if you build great big monuments, but if you're doing it with an attitude of wanting to get something from it, if you're doing all this outer stuff because, you know, somebody wants their name out there, they want their name on a building, or they want their name in somewhere, you know, if you're doing it with that kind of energy, that's not the right kind of energy. Better to do something small with great love than trying to do something impressive that's coming from ego. Make sense? So that's what we're talking about, the path of service, the path of karma yoga. And you can do your devotion with that attitude. You can do your jnana analysis with that attitude of truth. So we talked about the three paths to God. We're all of them. They all fit together, but you might be inclined toward one more than the other, and that's fine. Recognizing that. If you notice yourself in the path of devotion, then you might go, you know what? I'm going to do some more devotional stuff. I'm going to do some chanting. I'm going to buy some flowers and put them on my meditation altar. I'm going to do some singing. I'm going to dance with God. I'm going to let that express, but I'm also going to take that into meditation and use that energy for realization. And if you're a pathway to reason, you know what? Maybe I need to do a little more devotional activity. Maybe I need to awaken my heart a little more. You know, they're all fit together, and they're all pathways to God. But ultimately, it all leads to stillness. It all leads to tuning into that stillness within. As Ram, our guest speaker last week, he said, silence is God. God is silence. Tuning in to that still place inside of us where God is being and being us. Let's get still for a moment. Thank you, Father, Mother God, for your presence and activity in our lives. Thank you for reminding us of the truth and guiding us and showing us what is ours to do. Thank you for helping us to do it with full focus and concentration, to do whatever we do with an attitude of service, to see ourselves as vehicles, instruments of your presence. Thank you for guiding us into awakening to greater joy, fulfillment, and love, so that we can experience your presence in every area of our life, in every moment of the day, and to be a light in this world to help raise the vibration, the energy, the love, and the peace in the world. Thank you, thank you, thank you. In the name and through the power of Jesus the Christ and all the great saints and sages, we say, and so it is. Amen.